Hi guys, and welcome back to JavaScript Playground. In this video, we will try to solve the problem that I gave you in the previous video. So first, let's try adding an input element over here. So we can simply add an input element here. So the type is text. Let's give it a placeholder. It says enter to do item here. Let's give it an ID. Say to do input. So coming here, I already have the styles here, so moving on. So this is the same code that we had in the previous video. So when you click here, it keeps adding on the top. So let's change it for now. So we don't need to add it at the first element, but we need to add it at the end. So let's save it, coming back. So now when you click, it adds new items at the end. Let's refresh this. Now what we want is, we want to access whatever text is entered here. So for that, we can use the form events. And before we can use form events, let's select this element, say input box. So document dot get element by ID. Let's pass our ID here. So input box dot add event listener. So the name of the event is input. Let's add an anonymous function here. So as we saw in one of the previous videos, this add event listener, it gives us access to the event object. So we can pass it here. So e dot target dot value. So this way we can access the value of the element which triggered the event. Let's save it. Come in here, let's open our console. And as you can see, when I change the value, it's getting printed in the console. So we have access to the latest value. And if you notice here, so this is where we're creating the text node. So instead of hard coding this text list item, we can use this value which is generated by this element. So let's store it in a variable, say current input value. Let's keep it empty by default. And instead of printing it, let's store it in the variable. So whenever the input value changes, it gets stored in this variable. So instead of hard coding this, we can use the variable over here. Say current input value. So coming back, now if we enter Apple here and hit this add list item button, it adds the element in our list item. Similarly, if we say banana and we click here, it adds another element to our list item. But it's not clearing this input field after it's done adding the new element. So let's handle that. So this is where it adds the new element to the list. So after that, what we can do is we can select this input box. So we already have the selected element input box. And with input elements, they have a property called value, which stores the current value of the input box. So it's a HTML form concept. And in JavaScript, to access attributes, we can simply do selected element dot property name. So in this case, it's input box dot value. And to update it, we can simply pass empty here. Similarly, we need to reset our variable as well. So let's make it empty. Let's save it and come in here. Now let's try adding this. And as you can see, once we are done adding, it resets our input box to empty. And because it's empty, it starts showing this placeholder text. Now, when I click on this add list item without entering anything, it still creates a new list item with empty text. So let's handle that. So on this button add, this anonymous function is triggered. So we can put a condition here. If current input value is not undefined and current input value is not null and current input value is not empty, then execute all these lines. So basically what we're doing here is we're just checking if this value is not empty. All right. If it's not empty, we would execute these statements. So it will create a new list element, add some text and put it in the main list, or else show an alert box. So we can write an alert in the else part of the if statement. Please enter a valid to-do item. Let's save it. And now when I click on this button, it shows me this alert, please enter a valid to-do item. But if I enter some text here and I click on this button, it adds the to-do item in our main list. All right. So moving on. Now what we want is when someone enters text here and hits the enter button, it should add the element to our list. So let's give that a try. Now because this enter click is associated to input box, so we'll add an input element. So we will add the event listener here. And because this event involves keyboard, so we can use the key up event. So key up. Let's add an anonymous function here. Let's show an alert just to verify whether this is working or not. But before we show this alert, we have to check whether the enter key was clicked or not. So again, this is an event and we can get access to the event object. And this event object gives us access to the key code. So it gives us access to this property key code, which tells which key was pressed from the keyboard. So e dot key code is equal to 13. So for enter, the key code is 13. Let's paste it here. Let's save it. So coming back. Now when I hit enter, it shows me this alert, enter clicked. So far, so good. So moving on. Now instead of showing this alert, what we want is we want to trigger this function. So let's move this out. Let's paste it here. And now this cannot be an anonymous function. So let's give it a name. Say add list item. And let's pass the reference here. So add list item and call the function here. So add list item. So what's happening here is whenever a key is clicked inside this input box, we check whether the key is enter key or not. And if it is enter key, we run this command. We run this function add list item. Similarly, when the button is clicked, we call this function add list item. All right, so let's save it and moving on. Let's try typing. So let's say buy pens. Let's hit enter. And as you can see, it added a new list item. And if without entering something, I hit enter, it shows me this alert, please enter a valid to do item. Because this condition is a part of the function and we're calling the same function over here. Similarly, if we say apples and we hit this button, it still works. So now both the things are working, the input box as well as the button. And that's all for today. I hope this gave you a better understanding of how to add new HTML elements using JavaScript. But if you have any doubts or queries, feel free to drop a comment below or reach out to me on Twitter. I'll add my Twitter handle in the description below. See you in the next video. Bye and take care.